Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Board of Education special call meeting for today in. If you choose, would you please join me in a moment of silent prayer? Think about the students, families in Santa Fe, and please pray that we continue, that we not have another incident like this in the future. Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Cooper and the audience if you would lead us in
Please stand. Salute, pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to get through this without making mistakes, but it takes a while. Mr. Cooper is a good mentor. Ms. White, would you read the roll, make sure we establish the floor?
Deanna Bowman. Here. Earl Cooper.
Here.
Greg Kelly.
Here.
Kermit Kendrick.
Here.
Amy Todd. Here.
We've established a quorum. You have before you, board members, the agenda for today's board meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we'll now have time for either transferring employees that just came up recently. Please come up and speak. Let us hear from you if you have any concerns within the bounds that we can listen to and possibly adjust. We need to address the actions on the personnel report. Dr. Murphy, would you review those, please?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We have 22 appointments this evening or afternoon, 9 transfers, 3 requests for leave of absence, 24 resignations, 5 retirements, 13 terminations, 2 bus liability for insurance trainees, 1 bus liability for insurance waiver. I request that the board approve the personnel report.
Do you have a motion to approve the personnel action?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, I should ask for discussion. Any discussion, any questions from the public or the board, even though we've approved it? Okay, next topic is rezoning staff assignments. Dr. Murphy, would you review that, please?
Yes, board members, we have a total of 58 certified and non-certified employees who have been impacted as a result of our rezoning assignments. That includes, and you have a list of those individuals. I believe there are 47 certificated teachers. In addition to that, there are 3 other special services or special education units that have been impacted. English language teachers, 3, 2 enrichment teachers, 2 CMP workers, and 1 custodian, for a total of 58 employees that have been impacted. I want to specifically address where we are as it relates to this, and if you would just allow me, I'll try not to read to you, but I need to stay fairly close to script because I want to make certain that I get this exceptionally right. As you all know, we have major changes now in our attendance zone for our school district, and I want to also emphasize to you and to our public that these changes were very thoughtfully considered. We've given significant time and energy. We've presented and discussed this plan for rezoning our school district publicly. We've had it studied by the experts. We've submitted it to all the parties that were involved in the Stout case, and we ultimately then presented our information and our request for rezoning and the impact to employees to the federal court. You may remember that it was in December of 2017 that the court gave approval to the order, which contained a number of conditions as issued by the judge for us to move forward with the rezoning plan. It was in the order that the court recognized that moving those lines and would mean moving students, and in moving students, there would be an impact on our staff, and both those who teach and other non-certificated individuals that support our students. So the rezoning is not just about students being impacted, it's about teachers likewise being impacted, and that's what you have before you now. The court has addressed the faculty reassignments in its order and has ordered us to give significant objectivity to this assignment and also to bear in mind all of our obligations as it relates to the desegregation order. I would just like to read one statement that she issued just straight from the order. As the district reassigns faculty and staff as a part of the student assignment plan, the district shall consider the objectives of the desegregation in making personnel decisions and shall coordinate with the plaintiff parties regarding the impact of the proposed plan. We have done that via our attorney Wood Colvin and working with the other parties, the LDF and the NAACP as it relates to this. Legal Defense Fund. Pursuant to the court's order, we worked with our legal counsel, we worked with the plaintiffs as I've indicated. We've considered all the objectives of what desegregation means, and not only our obligation under the law, but the spirit of getting it right for all of our children. The recommendations have resulted in us being exceptionally thorough and exceptionally deliberate in the process of trying to project enrollments, evaluating teachers that would best meet the objectives and the needs of our students. And I'll give you a for example here. We invest significant resources into professional development for some teachers. And in the cases where we didn't have to lose that investment in those teachers but could allow them to transfer to a similar grade level, we certainly didn't want to lose the investment and the knowledge, the intellectual knowledge that they carry with them. We've discussed our reassignments with our principals. We've met with the affected personnel in terms of going to faculty meetings. Hopefully we've made ourselves accessible for any who wanted to talk to us. I do want to at this point acknowledge our Human Resources Department, who's invested countless hours, much energy, and many nights as I left late, they were still had the lights on and working on this rezoning and working on the side of personnel. We do believe that we've come up with the best plan we could, that the effective, and I want you to also know that those employees that have been effective have been absolute troopers in the way they understood and the way where maybe they weren't all happy and excited, but they certainly did what they needed to do to support children and to support the school district. This is an exceptionally good time for me to pause and say how grateful I am to all of the employees who have been transferred and their willingness to take those transfers, their willingness to embrace that change happens, and I'm happy to report there's even significant enthusiasm among many of those teachers about the opportunities to go and work in other schools. The reassignment process does involve those transfers as we've indicated. There have been some conversations for us about the student first impact, and so we've legally taken a look at that. I am happy that we afforded this particular time to any individuals who wanted to come and address the board. We may want to just ask one more time to make sure that we're not missing anyone, because we do want any employees who might want to address you to have that fair opportunity to do that. But board members, I'm exceptionally pleased that where we are is that we are at this important point. We prepared the transfer notice out for all those employees. They've had this opportunity to speak to their principals, to us, and now this opportunity to speak to you. The reassignments are reflected in your attached report, and I am recommending to you that you take action on that this evening, and I do request your approval of those assignments.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to approve the rezoning staff assignments?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Would offer one more opportunity if there are any employees here that would have questions about this. I'm sure most of you know how we arrived at this point. I'll say while I've got the chance that we know how disruptive this is, and we really appreciate, Dr. Murphy said it many times, the support with the staff, the teachers, administration, all has an understanding how important this is. And we've been told we understand that it changes your life. And thank you for what you've done and your acceptance of it. But please, if there's anyone has questions would like to speak, please come up. Any questions from the board?
Go ahead. Let me ask one real quick. This is not about, this is a stake in the ground based upon the order from the courts. And I know annually we have to provide significant data updates and all kind of reports back to the court. At what point does this kind of thing pop up again? Maybe a better question for Whit. Because, I mean, typically a rezoning process, the last one we did was quite a while back, and this one's driven by a couple of different things. What necessitates us to review this process and consider something like that again in the future?
I think, Mr. Cooper, my experience has been at least that external factors cause that more than internal factors do. Sometimes you have capacity issues at schools. You may have a school where you need to add classrooms, but you don't have room. You know, you may have neighborhood patterns that change where you've got too many kids one place and not enough kids in another. So it's usually those sorts of things as opposed to rezonings to rebalance in a more traditional sort of desegregation way. We don't see that as much as we saw, for example, in the early 70s and in that era of desegregation cases. In Jefferson County, for example, there has not been a comprehensive rezoning since the early 70s. Only rezonings that were attendant to annexations or school splits or those sorts of things, maybe a new school from time to time, but just in general sort of reshuffling the deck and trying to figure out where kids need to go. That just, my guess is, now I can't, you don't ever say never, right? But my guess is that this will be the most significant rezoning in terms of student movement that we'll see, at least in the near term for this, certainly for this case.
Well, oddly enough, I had a reason for asking the question. It's almost like the Amazon effect and what it's doing to property values in Boston and all this, where you have restricted amounts of available residential dwellings. Same thing in San Francisco, Seattle. And they just they didn't really announce, but they sort of inferred a big distribution center and 2,000 jobs in Bessemer. And so if you get 2,000 jobs coming here, the developments we're looking at, in the study we just completed are probably going to be accelerated quite a bit.
Well, don't get me wrong. If we begin to see significant changes in schools, then this district will need to take a good hard look at that. But that's, I think, probably different. I think we're not going to find ourselves in a situation where we wait 15 or 20 years and then have to take action all at once in a number of different areas. I think instead, the modern era seems to be that we're looking more closely at changes, both as we're anticipating them and as they're happening, so you don't find yourself having to make changes, drastic changes or dramatic changes kind of on the back end, if that makes sense.
Now, this whole thing about the distribution centers is more circumstantial than
Sure.
anything else. But always an opportunity.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Someone? Okay, on voting on rezoning staff assignments, have a motion second. Have all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Next item, at the last regular board meeting, we discussed the superintendent contract. So as per what we discussed in open meeting, Mr. Coleman was given the authority to go back and look at this contract, discuss and just consider the terms that we voted on the other day. I think he's got that contract ready as well as a resolution for us to go forward with this contract. So I guess in this case, I'll ask, is there a motion to accept the contract as written based on our vote last less board.
So we vote that, having not seen the contract. All right, well, the resolution, how's that look? I mean, we voted to let you look at a craft.
Correct. Is the contract, it's in your packet, I believe. It should be before you.
It is,
We made sure that all board members have.
and it is based on the conversations the board meeting we had last time. Okay, do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
For discussion, I'd like to say, as, in my opinion, Dr. Murphy is the state superintendent, I mean that. We supported her in efforts to go there, but we went through a panic when we thought we might be looking for a new superintendent. There's, I'm sure there are plenty out there that will come along in the future, but finding another superintendent of this caliber, if we could get that, was gonna be nightmares for us. We would have worked very hard to do it. I've been through the process. This is the third superintendent, second full-time superintendent. It is such a responsibility. We have the one here that I see taking us forward at least the 5 years of this contract. I can't imagine if she was not here, we're not here. So I'm certainly in favor of going forward with it. The contract we have with Dr. Murphy originally called for the board to automatically accept any pay raises from teachers that came across by state code. Dr. Murphy wouldn't let that hardly get into the conversation before she said, I do not want y'all to consider accepting the latest raise that's designated by the legislature on October 1 by state code. So that's been put into the contract, and the contract will not be subject to the 2.5% increase. So it's very fair, and I agree. I guess we can have discussion, public. Board? Okay. All in favor? All opposed? It passes. Congratulations, and you will be here hopefully for.
I did say this board members at the last meeting, but thank you so much. It really is my honor to serve Hoover City Schools. What terrific students, what outstanding school leaders and teachers and central office, and parents who care about their kids and want them to get it right. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here, and I just count it a blessing to continue to serve you. Thank you.
Dr. we want to discuss anything on this transfer plan?
Yes. Board members, as it relates to the transfer plan, am I jumping ahead?
I want to make sure we have our go.
Yes, we were delighted last evening to receive approval from the federal courts as it relates to the motion that we had filed with the court for the approval of our amended transfer plan. We submitted that earlier to the court, and on last evening, the federal judge issued an order allowing us to move forward with the transfer plan. She's issued that order, and board members, I would like to ask you, as just a matter of being official, that you approve the transfer plan. I understand it's a federal ordered piece, but I think you demonstrate your support of this as you approve this, I hope, and so that is my request to you, that you approve the transfer plan and that you accept the order of the judge. And so what I want to be very clear with, and you certainly guide me here, my request to you is that you approve the order as issued by the federal court specific to our transfer plan. You'll see under D there's a number 2 which says Exhibit A. You're not approving Exhibit A. That was an original piece that we had submitted to the court that said, hey, this is how we would rewrite or work on our board's policy related to this. So that's just a matter of information. You're not approving that. And so Exhibit B, Dr. Simmons, wherever you are, is specific to grandfathering. And there is no conversation in the order as it relates to grandfathering. So could I look at you, Wynn, and I don't know if there's anything we add there or not.
We shouldn't add anything
Okay.
at this point on that. And that wouldn't, I think that's something that we submitted to the court officially some time ago anyway. So I don't think the board would need to approve that as a matter of policy. Really the transfer plan, because it is a policy of the board. That's why the board will need to adopt that order as the policy of the board as it relates to transfers.
So again, my recommendation to you is for you to approve the order as issued. You have that order before you. It was approved last evening by the federal court, and I request your approval at this time.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to accept the transfer plan as outlined by Dr. Wilson?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Greg,
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to just add that although it's an order and it comes from a federal judge, but there's a lot of cooperation that goes into this, and it comes from all the parties involved. So the judge, this is not the judge kind of ramming something down our throats. The Department of Justice had to agree to this, the plaintiffs had to agree to this, and we had to have, through our attorneys, had to have some input based on our history into this, and it all kind of comes together where the parties collaborate and work together to come for this to come to be in an order. You know, this was a good job by everybody involved, and this is another step towards us ultimately attaining unitary status.
Thank you for that, absolutely.
I gotta admit too, when I read it, typically, like Kermit alluded, sometimes it's just power driven right down your throat. And to me, I was surprised pleasantly that it hit a lot of touch points and very succinctly described what actions and what criteria were used to address those. And I thought it was a very thoughtful approach. I mean, typically you don't warm up the federal orders necessarily, but this one was really well written and hit the right touch points. I thought I was impressed.
Well, while I acknowledge the work of Dr. Simmons and Dr. Dodson and my entire staff, this is absolutely a good time to say kudos to Whit, because he's done yeoman's work, and isn't that what you said to say, Whit? We appreciate Whit and our attorneys who's really worked to help us make our way to this point today, so just a thank you.
Also, Mr. Kelly, if you
Yes.
don't mind, and not to put anybody on the spot, but I would like to ask Wayne Smith how the transfer student hotline's going. If you would give us an update, maybe.
Remember, you asked that question.
I did.
I best relate that to an old sitcom. If any of you have seen I Love Lucy, and if you remember the one where Lucy and Ethel were filling in the chocolate factory and stuff was coming down the pipe and they were trying to put it away neatly. Well, that's been what it's been like in student services for the last couple of weeks, but it's been very productive. We've run a hotline for parents. We have been able to address their questions. We have spent time talking them through this process, and while it's not been easy for any of us, you know, any type of change brings about stress, but this has been going on for 3 years. So it is time for this to come and go and us to move forward. And we've been really able to give a personal touch to a lot of families and answer questions. And there's a really neat thing that exists in Hoover, and every parent in Hoover, regardless of which school, where your students are, they think that is the best school in the world. And so that's a good problem to have, but we've been able to talk parents through and tell them about the staffs at the other schools, and it's been very productive. It's been very hectic. We sent out probably over 2,000 letters of communication with a specific to you, your family, and your student, and we got most of them right, had a few mistakes, and we anticipated that happening, but we're almost over it when we get through this transfer policy and get that out and online, and we're just going to be ready to start school next year with all this being just a memory. So it's, I give it a thumbs up at this point. We're just ready to move forward, and still have some people that are not happy, and that's going to be the case. We can't make them happy because they're going to have to change schools or not get a transfer like they may have done in the past. But the one thing I have told them and can guarantee them, once they get to their new school, they're going to love it. So just give it a little time.
Thank you. I appreciate all your efforts.
You're welcome.
Board members, I'd also remind you that our student services department is made up of 3 people.
Yes.
Only 3 people who have worked, again, countless hours, lots of time and energy. So to Wayne and to Bob Lowry, to Lisa Yancey, thank you, and I was remiss not to say that publicly before you stood, but thank you.
And we did have some hired help. Grace Reed and Beverly Williamson, who was Don Hewlett's secretary, came in and been working for us part-time, helping with a hotline, and they've been just such a valuable asset to us during this time. We could have not made it without them, and particularly without Lacey Yancey.
Very good. Lots of people helping us, but, wow, have they worked hard to get us here today too. So, thank you, Wayne.
Would, remind you how we got to this point, and this goes back to stat case
65.
65, and when it was ruled, this is a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. This is not a circuit court. This is the highest court in the land, and it all started because we were getting the capacity issues in our schools. And thank goodness, our legal counsel, our superintendent, realized that we've got to report any changes in our district, and that's by a Supreme Court ruling. So once we realized we had to do the shifting around, rezoning, potential capital needs, then thank goodness, by good advice, we sought the court to get approval. So we're getting down that road. We're paying very much attention to our counsel, the other parties in the case. Judge Heikkila, who we know is a very smart person. If you don't believe what will happen if you don't get along with the parties, read about a big city in North Alabama that chose to do what they wanted to do and look at a couple other districts and just said, we don't need this, and see what happens. So we're very fortunate that we followed judge's orders, Supreme Court orders, and thank you for everyone that's gotten us to this point. Any other comments? All in favor? We voted? I thought we did. Okay, we go. Okay, sorry. I told you I messed up. Okay, information reports.
Three quick things, please. 2018-19 proposed board meeting schedule is in front of you. It is not an actionable item. We simply wanted to share it with you this evening so that you can take review of that compared to your own calendars and ask that you approve that in June, or if we need to adjust things, we're certainly happy to do that. Also, there is a policy addition that we're asking you to review. We never ask you to approve policy as soon as we put it in front of you, but give you the opportunity to review. Again, if you're prepared for that discussion at our June board meeting, we will have the discussion. This is a policy regarding reasonable suspicion, drug testing for all employees. As you may recall, we have drug testing for safety-sensitive positions such as bus drivers. But there are occasions where we have reasonable suspicion as it might relate to other employees who are in the watchful eye and arm's reach of our children. And so that's what this policy is about. We invite you to read that. You may have conversations. Dr. Simmons led the charge on that, and we're happy to discuss that further with you. We also would like to propose to you a job description. It is a job description for Assistant Director of Payroll and Benefits. We all want to get paid, and as we look at maybe future opportunities for us in the school district, we're trying to think forward about what job openings we might have, that we need to have, and making sure that we're in front of ourselves with a job description. So again, we're not asking your approval this evening, but as we put job descriptions in front of you, you can begin to see maybe some of the directions that we're wanting to take in terms of how we support our school district further. And so you have that read before you. And so those are simply informational items at this time for you.
So you've covered it. Ms. Veal, you're not going to speak on that, or you will?
The job description or the,
I think we're, if it's okay, we'll have Ms. Veal share, if we have questions, we'll talk about that at our June board meeting. Otherwise, if you'll, just informational at this point, unless you have questions.
If there's any questions, feel free to ask from the public. Thank you. The next part on our agenda, retiring employees. I've been to not as many as I'd want, but several retirements, so I've gotten the opportunity to speak to retiring employees. It's very emotional, and I'm not an educator, to see the dedication that's in the schools. I think I've told you all before, I've got a grandmother, a sister, and a niece that are educators, two of which two are retired, deceased. And it is really something to see the dedication. I don't know how you go through all of a sudden with what you do for that many years to decide to stop. And I don't think any of you really stopped, but just thank you. I'm just so proud I can just sit here and be a part of it. I don't know if I have time to say it, but of course the most rewarding thing we're going to see will be tonight when we see these children graduate, which is a result of what you do.
Mary? Make sure there's anybody out in the hall. We are so thankful that many of you have decided to join us so that we have this occasion to celebrate with you in a milestone. We are so proud to recognize several that have devoted a great deal of time supporting our students throughout their entire educational career. Some have supported in a teaching or administrative way. Some have supported by helping feed our children, drive them to and from school. So in several different capacities. For the 2017-18 school year, we have a total of 19 retirees that have a minimum of 25 years of service. And I know for the family members here, you realize that there is a lot of time beyond those 8 to 3 or 7 to 3 hours that our teachers and our support staff are there with our children. This number represents a total of 16 certified employees and 3 non-certified employees. And the combined years of service for all 19 totals 544 years. That's amazing. It's a huge commitment to education, and we are forever thankful for that. Approximately 12 retirees responded that they would be in attendance today. And I want to thank Carrie Pate, Human Resource Specialist, who has helped organize this, who has reached out to several of you and contacted you. So I appreciate her diligence in making this special. And so she will be helping us. And we will ask each person to come forward. Jason, I don't know if you want to have them remain up here until all names are called, or if you want to do them individually.
If they could grab their token and come to the lobby, and we'll do a group photo.
Okay. And we have several people that could not attend, so I'm going to start with those that we know for a fact that are here for a fact. First, we have Darlene Alford, Office A, Gwen Elementary, 25 years of service. Mrs. Vicki Allen, teacher, Deer Valley, 33 years of service. Ms. Ellen Anson, teacher, Rocky Ridge Elementary, 36 years of service. Ms. Rita Barksdale, assistant principal, River High School. 33 years of service. Ms. Teresa, or better known Terry Glory, teacher, Hoover High School, 28 years of service. Leanne Kahn, counselor, Bumpus Middle School, 30 years of service. Ms. Sarah Little, teacher, Hoover High School, 26 years of service. Mr. Harold Moran, bus driver, transportation, 25 years of service. Beth Hill, teacher, Hoover High School, 28 years of service. Elizabeth now. Mr. Chris Peterson, teacher, Berry Middle School, 26 years of service. Miss Alyssa Smith, teacher, Spain Park High School, 30 years of service. Miss Kimberly Spidell, teacher, Crossroads, 25 years of service. Melissa Stanberry, Deer Valley, teacher, 31 years of service. Are there any other retirees that were able to come? We are very excited, and also the family members. I like to say a personal note that I know that many of them would not be able to stay this long and have the dedication they have contributed to Hoover City Schools without your support. So will all the family members of our retirees please stand so we can give you a round of applause?
We'd like to recognize Councilman Shaw and Councilman Murphy that came to the meeting, and the reasons they told me were to recognize our instructors who are retiring, not to see the board, so. Thank you for coming.
May I acknowledge AEA before you walk out in the back? I know that you are here to acknowledge some of your members who are also retiring this evening. And so, do you want to read your brief statement? I know they stepped
I'm just
outside.
gonna go out to the hall at the same
Yes.
time. And I have two that showed that came today. The first one is Kimberly Spradell, an appreciation for 25 years of loyal service and dedication to the cause of public education in Alabama. It is with deep gratitude that the Hoover Education Association, the Alabama Education Association, and the National Education Association pay special tribute to this retiring member. And then Teresa or Terry Horry, she has 27 years of service.
Great. Thank you so much for acknowledging them.
Our next board meeting will be June 5th, that is a week earlier. I don't know why I was given the privilege to have a gavel at this meeting, but thank you. I'm sure I'll find out how many times I did it correct. Would like to do, I think Sergeant Foreman said the code for it's 10-7 when you sign off your shift, so I'm gonna let you sign off your shift. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Yeah. Board meeting is officially adjourned.
Hey, all right.